Hey guys, Zombie here, and welcome to the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre video on my channel. Today we're going to make a tier list of all the victims based on their abilities and base stats, and also assuming you are solo queuing and have the base level power. Now if you didn't know, when you play a victim, you get experience for their ability. As you gain experience, you level it up to 1, then 2, then 3, and you unlock new powers, and you can pick different options for the upgraded power. I want to state, the game's been out not even a week, and I know this tier list is going to change within the next week or two, so stay tuned for that video if you want to stay up to date. Without any further ado, let's get into it. Starting off with Anna, if you're just starting out playing Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I have to put her in B tier. Now I want to say I main Anna, I like playing her a lot, but I think for the average person as they're starting the game, her ability, it's really good when you know how to use it, but in the beginning it's hard to use. Her base stats based on the initial gameplay you'll have when you first start the game, which tends to lean more stealthy, avoid the killers, avoid confrontation. She kind of falls short of what you would need in that aspect. Anna's ability lets you take significantly less damage while it is active. Also, if you're in solo queue and you're using her power efficiently, you might not die, but you don't know what your teammates are doing and it's hard to coordinate and escape. So it doesn't necessarily add that much value to just getting out. Something else with her base kit is that you cannot hold E, or I imagine it would be one of the triggers on console, to, let's say, get a bone scrap or a lockpick without waiting to reduce your noise level. Which when you're first starting out, you don't really know how grandpa works and how noise wakes him up, and obviously noise alerts the killers. I think it's something a little bit challenging for new players to grasp. Within a few games they'll have that, but it's also just a little bit inconvenient for those players who don't know. They have no way of getting those items without making noise unless they know to let the noise meter go down. Next up, we have Julie, and I think based on playstyles in the early game when you're first starting out, she's definitely up in A. I do not believe she will stay here. I believe she will drop very soon. I believe Anna will rise up very soon as well, but we'll get into that towards the end of the video and maybe a separate video in a week or two. Julie's ability isn't the greatest, but it can come in very clutch when you're facing a Johnny. It also works against Cook, but it's hard to know when he's using his power because he can use it from across the map. But if you see a Johnny nearby and you use your ability, he can't track you. The same thing with Cook. He can't hear you when you use the ability. Julie's ability also allows her to run faster during the duration of the ability, but it does not give you more stamina or unlimited stamina or anything like that. The reason this is so situational, I mean, the running boost is always useful, but it's not great because, again, the stamina, it's generally more of a stamina problem than you're not running fast enough. When you're sprinting, I'm pretty sure you're faster than every killer. Maybe Sissy's the same speed, but don't quote me on that, I'm not positive. But in terms of the two particular killers she counters, or quote-unquote counters, it's much better against Johnny because Johnny will have to be nearby to see your footprint, and generally if you're trying to hide and he's trying to find your footprints to track you, that could be a very good opportunity to use the ability and make it so he can't track you. Further, her base stats allow her to open a toolbox to get a lockpick or get a bone scrap without making any noise by simply holding E or whatever the button is on your respective console. Again, I think this makes it a lot easier for the newer players to kind of get a feel for the game and play more of a stealthy, avoid the killer playstyle. It is worth noting that even though her stealth is high, her proficiency is quite low. And what that means is, even though she has a higher threshold for making loud noise, she does perform actions rather slowly. For comparison, Anna has slightly higher proficiency, but significantly less stealth. So she has the issue on both the proficiency side and the stealth side, which I believe are the two best stats for newer players. Next up, we have Connie, and I think that the surprise of no one, she's up in S. However, I think soon she will be not very good at all. For more explanation on that, be sure to check out my killer tier list, which will come out in the next couple days. Be sure to subscribe so that you can catch that video. Connie has arguably the best combination of ability and her stats for someone who's new to the game, especially in solo queue. Her main flaw is her low endurance stat, but it's not that much lower than some of the other victims, and her proficiency is so high, and her stealth is pretty good. She can do everything that Julie can in terms of not making noise, but because her proficiency is higher, it goes a lot quicker. Something I've noticed, and I'm not sure if they'll change this, is proficiency is kind of just a better version of stealth, because when you're performing an action faster, the noise meter doesn't raise more quickly. So essentially, raising your proficiency increases your speed while making the same amount of noise. It doesn't increase the amount of noise. So it's just more efficient to put points into proficiency over stealth. So Connie is able to quickly and without noise just hold the button without having to wait for noise to go back down and, harvest a bone scrap or get a lockpick. And that's without even getting to her ability, which allows her to essentially instantly break a lock. And right now, as most of you know if you've played the game, the main escape methods right now in the first week of the game being out are basically the front and rear gates. And to get there, generally you have to unlock the basement and then approximately 2 more doors, or 3 depending on the map. And of course, turn off the generator or the car battery to make sure you don't get electrocuted on the way out. However, I think in the coming days, probably days, definitely weeks, but I would argue the coming days, we'll see a massive shift from escaping out of the gate exits to leaning more towards the fuse box and the valve. And when that happens, Connie will drop in this because the lock-picking ability becomes less impactful in those scenarios. Next up is Sonny, and again, I think to the surprise of no one, he's down here at the bottom in C tier. Sonny's ability is a bit interesting in this game, as he is the only victim who has a power that you can cancel midway through. It allows him to hear noises through walls. But the reason why it's not very good, in my opinion, is it does not differentiate between killer noise and victim noise. It'll have the same white aura. Additionally, some sounds that you probably don't really care about also come up on his power. For example, if a victim or a killer or the family member goes through a bone, the dangling bones that make noise and it creates that notification, if you use his ability, it outlines that with the same white glow. So you get information, but it's difficult because the information doesn't really help that much because it's like incomplete information. Around this corner, is it another victim who I can team up with? Or is it Sissy who's ready to just turn around the corner and slash us to death? Additionally, sometimes you don't hear anything, which I wonder, I think if the killers are sprinting, I'm not sure if that gives you notification or if it's only Bubba always shows up because of a chainsaw. I also am not fully understanding his power, but even so, I had this one moment in a game recently where I could see Bubba and a killer and a victim all through like a crack in a window, and I'll put that clip on screen, but everyone's outlined with the same color, just kind of showing you that even though you get information, how good is the information if it's incomplete? It definitely has its place where you can check to see if someone's nearby, but again, sometimes it doesn't highlight killers, even if they're running. So I'm not entirely sure how it works. I think maybe once people learn how to use him better, he might go up. Additionally, like I mentioned, you can disable his ability midway through. So if you activate his ability and immediately disactivate it, it still works for about 2 seconds, and then it recharges in like less than 5 seconds. So you can essentially use his ability on repeat pretty much the whole game. I want to just quickly mention it is August 23rd at the time of recording this. I imagine that'll get changed. I imagine there will be rebalancing of victims separately from just the meta kind of shifting, which I've alluded to with the valve and the fuse box. But as of right now, again, it's less than a week after the game came out. And that's where we are. In terms of Sonny's stats, unfortunately, his stats don't really make sense in that if you wanted to play a victim with high strength, which allows you to fight with the killers or the family members, I apologize, you might as well play Leland instead, who has a better ability and similar stats in that regard. And his proficiency and his stealth are both low, which I think would hinder a new player. As a matter of fact, I think Sonny in a group dynamic is probably the worst victim there too, because if you're communicating with your team, then the power doesn't help you much at all, other than maybe getting information on where the killers are. If you can know the exact location of all 3 of your teammates and be able to, go through that information quickly to understand, okay, I know these are my teammates. This noise must be a killer, or must be a killer who went through one of those dangling bone things. But now that I think about it, I think you might just be the worst in almost every scenario right now. Now, when I say Leland makes more sense over than playing Sonny if you want to fight the killers, Leland I'm going to put up in B ahead of Anna, even though I love Anna and I play her almost every game. Just because his ability is, I would argue, a lot more understandable than Anna's. His stats in the proficiency and stealth department are a bit worse, but his ability is a lot more straightforward. Leland's ability allows you to essentially body check any killer that's nearby, and it's also area of effect for like a small area. So if there's 2 killers that are chasing you from behind and you turn around and use your ability, you can knock both of them down and stun them for a brief period, which I think is a lot easier to use than Anna's ability, which just reduces damage. You have to know, okay, I'm being chased. I shouldn't pop it yet because I still have a little bit of stamina. Once I'm low on stamina, then I need to pop it. Then I need to recover some stamina while taking these hits. Where's the nearest well? There's a lot more that has to go through your head when you're using Anna's ability. Leland just knocks them down and gives you time to think and kind of get some distance. which I think is significantly easier. His endurance is also a bit better. The reason I have him in B is just because, again, I feel like the most common playstyle among new players, especially in solo queue, when you're a little bit nervous, maybe, seeing the killer might scare you a little bit because you're still kind of learning the game and you feel like there's a huge power discrepancy. Being able to be as stealthy as possible in those first few games feels the best, at least in my opinion, and from what I've spoken to other people about until they kind of got their footing. And Connie and Julie are definitely up there in terms of that playstyle. Now, I think as you get better at the game, this tier list changes. I think as the meta evolves and more people start leaning towards Valve and Fusebox escapes, as well as I believe the strongest killer right now is widely considered one of the worst. I think he's very underrated, and I think it might surprise you. So definitely check back to see when that video goes up on the family member tier list coming soon. Do you agree with this tier list? Let me know in the comments down below.